The rise of Livia and the fracturing of an empire. The marble floors of the Palatine Palace sparkled like frozen honey under the warm Mediterranean sun, casting a golden glow that felt almost magical. Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the younger, though honestly, no one called him that anymore, stood at the edge of the imperial balcony, his fingers lightly brushing the cool stone. It was a powerful moment, you know. Rome sprawled out before him, like a lover's body, both conquered and breathtaking, just waiting for his next command. He could feel the weight of the empire on his shoulders, the hopes and dreams of countless citizens resting on his decisions. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once. Would he lead them into glory or chaos? The air buzzed with possibilities, and he couldn't help but wonder what his legacy would be. He was 42 years old, with the kind of face that coins were minted to capture. Sharp cheekbones, intelligent dark eyes, and a jaw that seemed carved by the gods themselves. But what no coin could capture was the hunger in those eyes, a hunger that had nothing to do with food. "My emperor," the voice came like honey poured over broken glass. Marcus turned to see Livia entering the chamber, her white silk stole catching the light like a luminous cloud. She was the daughter of a Sicilian merchant prince, not born to nobility, which was precisely what made her dangerous. She understood ambition. She tasted it in her own blood. "I've been waiting," she said, moving toward him with the calculated grace of a predator. Marcus pulled her close, breathing in the scent of jasmine and myrrh. In his arms, she felt like the answer to every question he'd ever asked. She felt like power itself. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known in that moment, was that this woman would eventually destroy everything he'd built. Not through malice, though malice would come, but through love, through the devastating, all-consuming love that makes men forget they are emperors and remember only that they are men. 3 years into their affair, the whispers had become roars. In the Senate, voices raised like angry wasps. In the streets, the people, those fickle lovers of Rome, began to mutter. The emperor's wife, Cassia, had been a saint among women, austere, dignified, the mother of 2 children who had the blood of emperors running through their veins. Everyone had loved Cassia, and then everyone had hated her for standing in the way. Marcus's brother, Lucius, sat across from him in the war room. His jaw clenched so tightly it seemed his teeth might crack like walnuts. Lucius was 3 years younger, and he had always lived in his brother's shadow, a place he'd learned to hate with the fury of the perpetually overlooked. "The grain shipments from Egypt are being redirected," Lucius said, not bothering with preamble. "Livia's father has taken control of them. He's building his own empire within your empire, Marcus. While you're distracted with her, our enemies smell blood in the water. Livia's father is a visionary," Marcus snapped. "The grain distribution will be more efficient. The grain distribution will enrich one family while our soldiers starve." Lucius stood, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Do you understand what you've done? You've let a merchant's daughter make you weak. The Germanic tribes gather at our borders, the Parthians mock us, and here you sit, writing poetry to a woman who beds you while her father bleeds Rome dry." Marcus rose too, slower, more deliberately. The movement was a threat. "Careful, brother. Even family has a limit to what I will tolerate." "Is it true?" Lucius asked, and his voice cracked like a boy's. "Is it true that you've written her into your will? That you plan to legitimize her children?" The silence that followed was the sound of an empire fracturing. "Get out," Marcus whispered. Lucius left, but not before Marcus saw what looked like tears in his brother's eyes. Tears of rage, tears of betrayal, tears that would eventually poison everything they had built together. That night, Marcus found himself unable to sleep. He wandered the palace like a ghost, his feet carrying him through chambers that held the memory of his father, his grandfather, emperors stretching back through time. In the private quarters where Cassia had slept, separated from him now by walls that might as well have been chasms, he heard the sound of weeping. He almost entered, almost. Instead, he continued to Livia's chambers, where she waited as she always seemed to wait, as though she had known precisely when he would come. "Your brother is angry," she said, not looking up from her scrolls. "You know what he said?" "Of course I know." She set down her stylus with deliberate slowness. "He told you that my father is stealing from Rome, that I've made you weak, that our love is a poison destroying the empire. Is he wrong?" The words escaped before Marcus could stop them. Livia rose and approached him, her movements fluid and inevitable. She took his face in her hands with surprising gentleness. "He's jealous," she said. "Your brother has spent his entire life watching you from behind a wall. You have everything, the throne, the power, the respect of millions. And now you have the one thing he can never have, my love. Yes, it makes him angry. Yes, it makes him dangerous, but wrong." She smiled. "Your brother is incapable of seeing the bigger picture, Marcus. He thinks in terms of gold and soldiers. He doesn't understand that power is a game, and like all games, it requires sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" he asked, though he didn't want to know the answer. "The kind that separates the strong from the weak," she said simply. Marcus kissed her then, pushing away the doubts that had been gathering like storm clouds. Whatever she was planning, whatever she was doing with the grain shipments and the treasury, it could wait. The empire could wait. Everything could wait, except this. The taste of her lips, the press of her body against his, the sweet annihilation of thinking that came when he was with her. Cassia died on a Tuesday in spring. The physicians said it was a sudden illness, perhaps a contaminated meal, perhaps the gods calling her home. She had complained of stomach pain in the morning, and by nightfall, she was convulsing on her bed, her children screaming outside the locked chamber door. Marcus had been with Livia when word came. He remembered the moment perfectly, the way his world had tilted sideways. He remembered thinking, "This is what I wanted," and then immediately hating himself for thinking it. The funeral was a spectacle of state mourning. Senators wept, the people threw flowers into her pyre, and in all that grief, hidden like a snake beneath stones, were the whispers, poison. Everyone was saying it, though no one dared say it loudly enough for Marcus to hear. That night, alone in his chamber for the first time in 3 years, sleeping without Livia's body beside him, Marcus found himself weeping for a woman he had betrayed, a woman whose only crime had been loving him faithfully while he destroyed her with his infidelity and neglect. The arsenic was in her wine, Lucius said 1 week later, cornering Marcus in the library. His brother's face was flushed with rage, his hands shaking. "I've had it tested. Livia's servants administered it, slowly, over months. Each dose small enough to go unnoticed. That's love, isn't it? Patience. The kind of patience a merchant's daughter would learn in the trading houses of Sicily." "You're mad," Marcus said, but his voice trembled. "Am I then explain the autopsy results? Explain why Cassia's organs were blackened like burnt wood? Explain why I found Livia's jewelry, the jade pieces she claims to have lost in Cassia's private chambers?" Marcus hit him. He drew back his fist and struck his own brother across the face with the full force of imperial fury. Lucius went down hard, blood streaming from his mouth, and when he looked up at Marcus, there was something broken in his expression, not just physical pain, but the deep wound of betrayal by the one person he'd tried to protect. "If you truly believe that," Marcus said, breathing hard, "then you would execute her." "Yes," Lucius said from the floor, "I would." "Then the fact that you don't proves you're lying. You have no evidence, only suspicion and jealousy." But Marcus was lying too, to Lucius, but more importantly, to himself, because he had asked her that very night. After Lucius left him, Marcus had gone to Livia's chambers and asked her point blank, "Did you poison my wife?" And she had smiled that terrible, honest smile. That was one of the reasons he loved her. "Does it matter?" she had asked. She was dying anyway. "Not from my hands, but from the slow death of being married to a man who loved someone else. I simply accelerated what was already happening. I gave you freedom, Marcus. I gave us freedom." He had wanted to rage at her. He had wanted to call the guards and have her executed on the spot. Instead, he had made love to her with a passion that bordered on violence, and afterward, they had both wept. The money began to disappear like morning mist. Not all at once, Livia was too clever for that. But steadily, consistently, the imperial treasury began to bleed. Contracts were awarded to Livia's father at 3 times their normal cost. Military suppliers charged premium prices for inferior goods. Mines in Britannia that should have yielded mountains of gold produced barely enough to pay the workers. Marcus found the discrepancies himself, buried in ledgers that his finance minister had been too frightened to bring to him directly. When he did the calculations, he realized that over the course of 3 years, more than 50 million denarii had disappeared. That was enough to wage a full-scale war. That was enough to build cities. He confronted Livia in her chambers, throwing the ledgers down at her feet. "What is this?" he demanded. "What have you done?" She didn't even look at the papers. Instead, she looked at him with an expression of such pity that it made his blood boil. "I've done what any intelligent woman would do," she said calmly. "I've prepared for the inevitable. You're going to fall. Marcus, you know it. I know it. The entire empire knows it. The only question is whether I fall with you, or whether I have the wisdom to save myself." The wisdom, he repeated, numbly. Is that what you call theft? Betrayal? I call it survival. She moved toward him, her hips swaying with practiced seduction. But it doesn't have to end this way. Marry me. Legitimize my position as Empress. With that title, everything I've taken becomes legal. Everything becomes mine by right, and I will stop. I'll even replace the money if you wish it. We could rule together, truly together, for the rest of our lives. He wanted to kill her. He wanted to wrap his hands around her throat and squeeze until the scheming brain inside her skull stopped working. Instead, he did something far worse. He considered it, for one long moment, standing in that chamber with marble walls that had sheltered emperors for 1,000 years. Marcus seriously considered marrying this woman, because she was right. With her as empress, with her family's wealth supplementing the imperial treasury, they could crush their enemies. They could build greater monuments than ever before. They could create a Rome that would last for 1,000 years. That was how the poison of ambition worked. It didn't announce itself. It didn't come with warnings. It simply dressed itself in the clothes of reason and logic, and before you knew it, you were willing to destroy everything you'd ever loved to obtain something you'd never needed. In the days that followed, Marcus was paralyzed by indecision. He found himself unable to execute orders, unable to make the decisions that kept an empire functioning. The borders remained unattended. Crop failures went unaddressed. Rebellious generals in distant provinces went unchallenged. Lucius came to him one evening, his face gray with exhaustion. The Senate is meeting tomorrow, his brother said quietly. They're discussing whether you're fit to rule. They're discussing succession. Some are even whispering about military coup. You must act, Marcus. You must either marry her and legitimize her, or you must execute her and restore order. And if I do neither, Marcus asked, then Rome will choose for you, Lucius said. And when the choice is made, it will be far more brutal than anything you could accomplish yourself. That night, Marcus stood once again on the palace balcony, looking out at Rome. The city lights flickered in the darkness like earthbound stars. Somewhere out there were millions of people who depended on him, soldiers and farmers, merchants and slaves, children who would inherit whatever world he left them. And here he stood, paralyzed by his love for a woman who had poisoned his wife, stolen his treasury, and offered him the most terrible bargain, his soul in exchange for her love. The choice, when it finally came to him, was both simple and impossibly hard. He would not marry her. He would not let her go. Instead, he would call the Senate to an emergency session and let them decide her fate. In doing so, he would finally abdicate the one power that had been his alone, the power to destroy what he loved. If you enjoyed the story, do well to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. Watch out for episode 2.